Hello to the audience, and very welcome to join us for this series on science and consciousness. We have very special guests today, and the main the speaker of today is Thorsten and Dr. Ludwig, and I will be interviewing him. I will give a little bit of his background, and we also have other interviewers afterwards, and I will introduce them also. And that's Dr. Thorsten. I'm just reading about his little details. He has not given much, but gives us an idea about his background. He works as a researcher in Berlin Institute of Innovative Energy and Propulsion Technologies. He's deeply interested in this new energy field and has studied, researched, experimented for many years. And his area of interest is energy and consciousness projects. And he has worked as a president of German Space Power Association. And another very interesting aspect of his work, in year 2009, he co-founded the Institute of Applied Consciousness Research together with Dr. Marco Bischof. And Dr. Marco Bischof is also one of the interviewers. He is also with us. And they both are interested in the frontier of science and research in this field. And we also have got and Dr. Ivo is with us, and more accurately, Ivo. And his background, I will tell in brief. He is a research fellow at the European Bioinformatics Institute, European Molecular Biology, laboratory biochemist with experience in regulation of gene expression. But all are very interested in this field of consciousness, and you get an idea from Thorsten's background, having projects in this field. So the one simple question to Thorsten, just in one sentence or maybe a few words, what is consciousness? And for us, for a layman, how do we understand the word consciousness?
Well, to me, mainly consciousness is our experience. So what we perceive, what we see, what we feel, what we think, in our whole existence, all that is consciousness.
Oh, excellent. And so, what has science got to tell us about this whole field of consciousness? And is there embarrassment in the field of science about this so-called consciousness?
Well, let me say it from my point of view as a physicist. The physicists have the dilemma. I, as a person, know about consciousness, have my experience, and so forth. But as a physicist, experimental physicist, or even theoretical, consciousness does not exist. It's not, it has no formula representation. The force is not represented in the main course. So as a physicist, if you work with consciousness, you're immediately out of the box, meaning you're not in the mainstream. But for me, consciousness does exist, and I think it's very important to know how does it affect our life, our being, and how does it interconnect. And for me, it's quite clear that there is more than just the material. There's a lot of evidence that our human experience and the world and the universe has more to offer than just pure materialism. Now, the first bridge is energy, because also energy is something different from solid matter as we know it right now. Um, so I'm not really sure if now is my time for my main statement. I assume it is.
Yes, yes.
I just say a
Please
few
go ahead.
things
Yes.
about it. I think that much more is possible than we think today, or a lot of people are very imprisoned by materialism, by thinking that that is all that we see and can touch. That's mostly everything. But there is a large number of people who know that there is more. And I personally, my message is yes, there is a lot more, and there could be even much more if we understand and realize the power and the possibilities with thoughts and consciousness. And I think it's very important to distinguish between the body and consciousness. If you look at evidence like near-death experience or out-of-body experiences, and also I can say I myself have these experiences. So um, you can actually see, realize, and experience that you exist even without the body. So, though then, of course, the question arises, how does the body work with, how the mind and the consciousness work with the body? So that's one of my main interests. But I also am a very practical person, so I would like to understand how does technology work if we can include the mind? How will communication advance, travel? How can that be possible with new things? And so in my life, I concentrated more on the energy side because I think if you need any new propulsion, you also need to understand the energy, but also gravity and how inertia and gravity works is a very important part. So, but in all of that, um, I think the first experiment is with myself. And I can make so many experiments inside myself. I don't need any external things. And so I find meditation to be a very, very important tool to start to concentrate and also start to journey in your inner worlds, which are very connected to what happens outside, how you can interact with people, and also, yeah, what happens. So, for me, the interaction with people is very important. I mean, I can read books and so forth, but if I meet the real people behind it, for me, it's always a much richer experience. I learn a lot more, and also with experiments, I can say if you read a book about a complicated experiment, it's very difficult to actually do it. If you go and talk to the people who actually do it, you can pick it up in a quick thing. And a lot of experiments, I think, are very difficult if you do them without having a connection with the actual people who have done it. But sometimes it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, Prashant.
yeah. Thank you. You know, your the discussion today is mind, matter, interaction, and obviously you have researched on this and you got some ideas and thoughts, reflections on this. Tell us a little bit more about this, that field of mind, matter, interaction.
Okay, so when we started our institute, we looked around. What we saw was most validated, most interesting existing research as a starting point. And so one thing was the Professor Tiller and his work. I mean, I could talk for
Mm.
hours on his work, and he wrote so many books. So, but what we picked up was his main experiment, and that is connected with pH. And so at this point, let's see if I can share my screen. Then I can show you one or two pictures, and it's easier to explain. This doesn't work. I'll probably go like this. Hang on. Share screen. So I cannot make it full, otherwise I don't see you anymore and so forth. So is everybody seeing some picture, Professor Tiller?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that's Professor Tiller. He's was a professor at Stanford University, and then he, for many decades, he made experiments. Um, so this main Tiller experiment is you have here a glass of water, and you measure the pH, and then you also have this device here, which looks like a little cell phone or something. It's an electronic device. So you put the intention into this electronic device, and then you do this measurement. So then we had two other things that here is what we concentrated on. So we have this Professor Tiller, we have Kozyrev and his torsion balance, and also this mental influence on random processes. There's a Princeton engineering anomaly research, which did for decades experiments on that. So what we did, we picked up on these, and here's like a summary picture, might be too small, but peer in general is about random processes. So let me come back to your question. Um, so I showed you the that experiment, and I'll stop sharing it a little bit here. Um, so so we have this pH experiment. Let's concentrate on that. And the random process, we made a machine, and it shows you how you can try to influence with your mind a random process, like throwing dice or something like this. It will take a little more to explain it, I hope. Um, it's enough for now. The
Mm.
torsion balance, the Russian Kozyrev, is also a very sensitive instrument that is a single thread of um, uh, some thread, not metallic, and you hang a little indicator on it, and then it will swing over hours in different directions. And Kozyrev used that as an indicator for his theories, but in the end, he was able to measure the position of star and sun, where they actually are right now, not where we see them, with his telescope. So, so we started from there, and then we we ventured on a even much more complicated
I just want to,
apparatus.
can
Yeah.
I, yeah.
Okay.
So did he actually shift the pH, or what was that? Through the intention, was it what was the experiment? Did he able to?
Yeah. The experiment is you shift for example, four people sit together, and in a meditative process, they clean the device. Then they put the intention. The pH should shift by one digit, which means because it's logarithmic, it's 10 times more or less. And then you have it next to the glass of water for a couple of months, like 3 to 6 months. And then you see that actually the pH kind of follows. He also, and we also try to make it in a shorter notice because it's a lot of work, but we published together with him. We did work for a couple of years, and it worked, even though the imprinting was done from America and the device was in Germany. So you don't have to sit right next to it. I can mention the published paper for that. It's a bit too much to explain all the details now.
Sure. Very nice.
Maybe I show you one more picture. Then you see then the audience also sees the paper. And yeah, here we have at this website, the white paper 28 is our 2-year experiment with Tiller, and the main outcome is this picture here. So you see here is weeks over 40 weeks, and the imprinted device was showing quite some difference, while I'm not sure the control is here. These were other devices that they worked with alongside. Yeah. So one thing I want to mention, or two things I want to mention. So we did this very interesting curve here. Every point, this was also here a 2-day session where we put all our instruments together with Volkamer's scale. He's working with a very sensitive weight measuring device. And so every here, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, these were meditation or intention periods. And it's very interesting that in all the totally different devices measuring completely different things, you could see the effect. So, so that is one thing. Now I like to mention one totally more different subject, in the sense that here on this paper I proposed how to use the quantum field and a so-called Casimir effect for measuring the influence of thoughts. Now, in a short way to explain it, the Casimir effect came from a Dutch physicist, and the red here are metal plates. So if you put metal plates quite close together, then outside are more possible waves, and possible waves means that the 0-point energy, the fluctuation of just the quantum background fluctuation, will be more outside the plates than between the plates. So you get a force. And now today, that was 1949, but then after 1998, the measuring devices became affordable, and with piezo positioning, it became easy to actually do this and measure it. And so I put together the peer results from this random processes, and say that random quantum background fluctuations are also just a random process. So if we could change that by the amount the peer people were able to change it, it would be an tremendously large amount of energy and force. So this is how you would measure it. This is a process which is known as atomic force microscope but here we don't want to use it as a microscope. We just want to use it to measure a very tiny force, about 10 to the minus 12 Newton, nanonewton. So you have a silicon cantilever that kind of bends. This is like 200 microns, and you have a laser reflecting, and then you can measure the force. So if you build it, it looks like this, and then you need some instruments and more instruments, but it's tabletop. It's not super complicated and not super expensive. And then if you do it right, then this is the distance. Then you can see how the force reacts to it. So I'll stop sharing again. So one thing I here to put the spiritual perspective in. For 15 years, I proposed it. Some people were interested, but nobody put in any money or anything. So on my birthday last year, I decided I'm not going to wait any longer for any money. So I'm just building it. So I started building it. I ordered all the things. I used what I had, which was like 2/3 I had, 1/3 I needed to order. And then I was talking to a very spiritual lady, and I told her about that, which I know for some time. And she told me the money will come. And on the same day, somebody paid me a bill that was long lost. And I got all the money I had already ordered, and everything worked out. So sometimes you just have to take this step of courage and keep going, and then somehow help comes. And this is just to give this perspective on how it affects the life if you do this, because for this field, we don't get any real public money or help or so forth, even though I think this is a tremendously important area. And it would be great if we would be, somehow getting enough funds and so forth to work more easily. But there are other ways. So if you really are determined and keep going, then help comes. And so I'm still in the middle of this experiment. I still need to do this mind interaction thing and meet some volunteers and some help. And to round this up, the important thing for me here, which is outside my main line. See, building all this was my main line, but to make a human interface, that's the next step. Because with these graphs, it will be difficult for someone to actually work with it. See, that's one reason why this consciousness research is difficult, because every situation is different. If we apply it in our real life, it has impact. The reality is affected, so it's important to us. So if it's just an experiment somewhere, and then there are noises and distractions, and so it's difficult to relate to it. That's one whole set of problems. And I talked to Brenda Dunn, for example, who worked in this peer lab for a very long time. And she told me that you can, if you don't look at the humans and make it nice for them, and make a surrounding where they feel comfortable, and then you have success with these experiments. But if you are harsh with them and you tell them from the front, I don't believe in this, you do whatever you want, then you will not find the effect.
Is it okay?
Yeah, I've stopped sharing again. Let's see. Or did I stop sharing? I stopped sharing. Yes.
I wanted to just ask.
Yes.
You got this very thorough insight in the field of consciousness and its influence at a very subtle level on the matter. And so you need extra sensitive instruments to pick that up. But your area of interest is also golden age technology. So golden age technology, will it mean you have to develop a different level of consciousness, some purified consciousness? What is your understanding of golden age You use this term. What
Yes,
do you mean?
absolutely. Well, I'm not sure if everybody knows what I mean with golden age, or I know you know what I mean with golden age, but not everybody in the audience might know that. So in the understanding of Indian tradition, or the Raja Yoga tradition, there are different times, and the golden age is a time where there is happiness, where the people are actually then know who they are. They know they are not the body. They know they are the consciousness, and the whole life is um, built on that principle. So um, yes, they are pure. They don't have any bad intentions. So there's just happiness, but there's also some technology there, which is related with the mind. So, for example, there is the illumination. It works with crystals, but also the mind power is related to it. And then I think for me, the most famous technology of that time is the vimana, which is like a flying instrument. Now, for me, so we could talk a lot more about the golden age to bring people on board what it means to be actually not body conscious, but to actually be completely aware of your soul. That means if you leave the body, for you, it's just like buying a new car. It's nothing different from that. So so the vimanas, the flying machines of that time, I think if you look at the deities from that time, there are some who just fly. They don't need anything physically. They can just fly. Then there are, as time goes on and consciousness loses power, some need some physical enhancement of their power in order to fly, which is for us a little bit easier to understand than just flying. But so they need like some some something. So I there are some pictures of that time, but they're not from that time. So there are some legends which are also not from that time. So it's not so easy for us to know how did they actually look like, the Vimanas. But um, I think that there are so many reports about them. So for me, it's an interesting question. How do they work? So and if you consciousness is one thing, but if you look around what actually gravity is and how it works, there are quite a lot of theories. I know the famous Newton has one theory, then came Einstein, but there are others who have completely different ideas about it. And it's if you look in the cosmos, there are a lot or good number of reasons why there could be something else with gravity. So just for example, the role of electricity and magnetism in space is something that is because of the forces is not completely understood. There is an electric universe sort of people. It's a whole branch where people talk about the electric and magnetic forces, and yeah. So if you want a flying machine and the gravity is actually electric phenomena, just for an example, there are some good papers on that from Hal Puthoff, for example. Um, then you can also manipulate it in a completely different way. Um, but the one thing I like most about the Vimana is the thought steering. And some also say it's thought powered. So, and from the connection with the zero-point energy experiment I just told you, I personally think that in the whole field of new energy and propulsion, the consciousness is a key that if we understand that, we will open up these technologies.
Yeah, Thorsten, so interesting to know your background and how much you are involved in this field of consciousness and going into such detailed uh, study of this. At a personal level, what is your, observation and you are a meditator and in this area, what is a big achievement after this spiritual effort compared to someone, your colleague who has not done any meditation?
Well, there are different levels. One level is it's good to stay calm if there is problems around you. It's good to keep hope if hope is difficult to see. Um, like for example, when the next funding will come, or how to get going without funding. But also on a more practical level, I experimented with using intuition in my work. And for example, when I did my PhD, I had a very large instrument with hundreds of cables and hundreds of instruments. And when something, it was like a little accelerator. So when the machine was down, which was quite a few times, was an old construction, then I would tune in, and a lot of times I had very good and sometimes even great results. I just got this idea I have to look at the certain big machine that I've never opened and never did anything with it, and it never failed. But I thought I have to look there for the problem. I did, and there was the problem, and I found it. If I would have done it systematically, I would have taken weeks and months to find the problem, and this took me only a couple of days. Um, but the main thing basically is if it's meditation, I think helps to find inner peace and happiness. And I think that is very important.
Excellent. Thorsten, so nice to have you in this discussion. But now the interview will continue. We got two experts in this field of science and consciousness. As was mentioned before, we got Dr. Marco Bischof, and he's also based in Germany, northern Germany. And as was mentioned, he is part of this project, Institute for Applied Consciousness, along with Thorsten. And at the frontier end of the science field, and we have Ivo, who is also from the background of science and more like a biochemistry. So it is now over to you. If you would like to say anything or ask anything. First, let us come to Ivo. Ivo, who has got something to say.
Thank you first for letting me take part in this conversation. And I think it's very interesting what Dr. Thorsten explained and all these experiments. And I tend to agree with the fact that absence of scientific evidence doesn't mean evidence of absence. But in a sense, what Dr. Thorsten is showing is already providing some bits of scientific evidence, which is very interesting because myself, basically being trained with the scientific method. So the way you train your mind, you tend to interpret experiments, you tend to make or infer about the results that you obtain. So one question that I would like to ask, for instance, when you plan one of these experiments, and we are always told when we plan an experiment, we do need very good controls in order to pick up these differences. So I mean, sometimes it's difficult. You mentioned noise, and you mentioned the environmental influences, and it must be really hard to be certain about these differences at the beginning. But once you've got the proper controls and you can establish that, you can postulate something. What are your thoughts about this?
Very good question. Thank you. Well, if you look at the peer project, for example, now there was a Princeton professor, the Robert John, who started it. So they had a staff. He also had a lot of problems with the university about that, but that's a different story. But so what he was able over 2 to 3 decades in that range, he did way over 3 million experiments. I don't have the number in my head now, how many it was, 3, 5, or 10. I'm certain it was more than 3. So then the effect they found was in the order of 0.1%. So 1 in 1,000. So only if you have, let's say, more than 10,000 experiments, you were able to actually see this effect. If you want to be certain, you better have 100,000. And if you have 3 million, then it becomes quite clear. Yeah. So now when we did it, we didn't have the resources to even have 10,000 people come in and do something. That was out of our range. We, I think, reached 300. So our aim was to enhance the effect, to find points where actually you have a more direct effect. But since we didn't have such a large number of cases, we could not be as sure as the peer people. So we were more trying to apply it and find areas to enhance it. That's one set of problems. The other set of problems related to this is that the human experience, the human mind, and even the world is always changing. It's always different. So the scientific method wants you to have controlled environment, which with a human being is basically impossible. I mean, it's not easy to control yourself, but it is basically impossible to control others. And so the scientific method has problems here. So what I showed you, like, I think with the Tiller experiment that we did over a year, that was quite a proof for that. Of course, it would be nice if others would redo it. So that's one set of questions, that it is difficult to actually see if the weather is different, if the person's in a different mood, something happens, it all affects it. So repeatability is very difficult in this sort of experiments. And yeah, I wanted to say one more thing, but I lost it. Maybe it comes back.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, for instance, I would say that there are many forms of energy that we may not be aware of. So they may be there, but we haven't been able to detect or to measure. So if you are into the energy field and you have some sort of evidence, I'm definitely prone to think that it's worth pursuing that, and to basically gather more evidence, even if it's not strictly the following the scientific method, because the scientific method may only lead us to discover certain things. This is my thought.
Yeah, I think the scientific method has a lot of advantages. It has brought us quite far in understanding, but in the area of consciousness, it is sometimes difficult because of this repeatability, and so the so-called anecdotal, meaning the single events, they sometimes say a lot in this. You have an experience, like you have a vision, or you have an out-of-body experience. You don't necessarily need to repeat that. It's nice if you can, but it's also an experience if you have it once. So the scientific method, of course, has problems with that, which which is fine, but um, yeah, for me, it's like either you can repair a TV or you can't. Either it works or it doesn't work. So in the sense of that, for me, there is, like, if we would understand consciousness on a deeper level, we could do things that we can't do now. And if we can do them, we'll know. Scientific methods or not.
Excellent. Wanted to see if Marco, you want to say anything? It will be nice to hear from you.
You mentioned different experiments that you made. I wonder, do you believe there is a single source of energy in free energy? And what has this to do with spirituality?
Yeah, the good question. Yeah, everything is one in one sense and connected, and so in the end, there might be one source of energy, but it splits up in different ways. So if you even have the question, for example, life force, is chi, prana, or energy, is that all the same or not? It's also a related question, I would say. I would say the same thing. There might be some something the same in there, but it's also could be different energies. So, for example, the quantum background energy could be one energy, but I think consciousness is beyond that. And also some experiments where clearly this consciousness force or influence cannot be shielded by electromagnetic shielding. So it's beyond that. It must be on a on a different level. So, and how many levels are there? I know there's for example, Tiller, I think, had 12 dimensions, Heim 8. So 4 in the consciousness realm and 4 in the physical realm. So I think we still don't know enough to answer these questions correctly. So I assume there are, on a certain level, different energies of different kind. Like you have magnetism and gravity, but also on these, there's always a tendency to go to the unified theory, and with a lot of these physical forces, we found that there is actually a connection, and they actually are like magnetism and electricity. They are actually the same thing. It's just if you move differently or something like that. So I think also with the consciousness, it will be similar. We might identify 3, 4 different forces, and then later discover they are actually all of one origin. Do you want to ask another question?
Yeah, another question, if it is possible. So I'm a biologist, so basically I'm interested in mechanisms, molecular mechanisms, and what is your take on the influence of consciousness in different biological systems? I would guess that depending on the complexity of the biological system, there may be a different type of influence, provided we accept the fact that, you know, that consciousness is something inherent to biological systems.
Yeah, well, for me, the first experiment is always with yourself, you know. So how does your thoughts and consciousness work together with your body? You know, that for me is a open question. You know, it's not scientifically explained in all details, you know, but it works. Obviously, we can do it, and so I know there is this question, and is consciousness primary, or is the physical body primary? And for me, the consciousness is primary. I think the consciousness controls the body, in the brain is kind of like an antenna and picks it up. So, but now I think your question more aimed to how do we influence plants or animals, or how do they influence each other? And yeah, I know that there are the biophotons, for example, though there is more subtle influences. And then comes the level of consciousness. It's yeah, speculative, because we haven't really understood ourselves in that sense. I mean, it works, but is there how does actually, is there like little magnetites, or you know, or what particle, or how does it actually work in connected with the physical things? Like I said, for the physicist, unfortunately, the consciousness is not defined. It's only half of or 1/3 of the people acknowledges the existence. So it's kind of uncharted territory there. So, but for biology, of course, it's not. I mean, because in the human experience, the consciousness is more accepted. I mean, the whole psychology kind of builds up on it. Yeah, so I have to say I can only speculate here, because our work was not about that. We Tiller used biological systems. So he used the pH, and he also used one cell system and one protein cycle. So he had experience with that. But from my point of view as an experimentalist, water is already difficult enough. You have to purify it. You have to do all sorts of effort to make it repeatable. And biological systems is just another level. You need a different lab and a lot of experience to actually do some experiments there. So we didn't go down that line too much. We would have loved to know more or measure more on the human being connected with the consciousness, like heart rate variability and some more sensible, EEG and things like that. So to kind of have some more repeatable or measurable data from the human being. So, but I think light is very much connected to it. Because there is a conscious light, but which I think is different from physical light, and then there is physical light, and I think that would be my first line to look for a combination there, how the mental light kind of affects the subtle physical light, like the biophotons. And one thing I like to mention here is coherence, because sometimes you don't need too much of a physical interaction, just that the vibrations are coherent. You can have exchange of information and energy. Yeah, similar to if you have like sound, I don't know really how it's called in English, but you have these, if you have like a sound instrument and you have another instrument on the same exact tone, over far distances with little energy, you can exchange energy and information.
There is still time if IEO has any other anything to ask. Or
no, I just would like to comment because this you brought up this light, the influence of light, and basically, let's say we think of our circadian rhythms and the way many genes are expressed depend on our day and night oscillations. And of course, during the night, there's no light or very little light, let's say. So basically, on the other hand, the fact that there is light makes us aware of our environment. And this awareness is part of consciousness. So there is a link with the biology. Whether we want to accept it or not, so sort of speaking. So light is also a form of energy. So you have a good point there.
I wanted to ask another aspect. You mentioned about physical light, and you mentioned about another light. What is that other light?
Well, that's the other light is light that you can see with your consciousness only, and it's not physical, but if you can see it in a vision, you can see if some people can see auras, but there's more to it. Also, it's possible to have an inner experience of light, and But since it's not physical, it's not so well known. It's you can either see it with your so-called third eye, which is like the subtle eye, and some say the soul world is has light, or the soul itself is light, but it's not physical light. It's this consciousness light.
Is light necessarily the right word for it, or it appears it could be something, the we can use some other word for it, because
Yeah, I think definitely it has more aspects to it than just this light aspect. For example, consciousness or intelligence, memory, um, personality traits. There are a number of things that are also there. But also there is this light experience that we can have. And that's why I think you have to remember it has more aspects for sure, but it also has a light aspect.
excellent. And would like to thank Thorsten and very much, and also thank our special guests, Marco and Ivo. It was very rich, but I would like to ask Thorsten, is there a final message you would like to give to the larger world, but especially the science world in this context? You got any, if they want to get some inspiration, what will be your one word for this?
I think our inner world and our inner journey is very important. And I think if you look back on your life, at the end, it's very important how much you understood yourself. And from that perspective, how you interacted with others and what you made out of your life. And did you do good things, or do you do things that are unimportant or you want to regret? So I think that's to do things that are actually important and good for humanity based on love and peace. I think that is an energy that will give you a good feeling and also will help you in the long run. And so it should not be forgotten. It should be a very important part of what we do. We should not just run around after money, fame, or knowledge just for that. So so the daily focus on the inner journey is I think as important as what we actually do. But there should be a balance. We should, in my point of view, should not depart from this world. It will just make a lot of problems for other people. So better to have a good balance between what you do physically, how you keep up everything that you do, and what you work. But the inner journey is also very important. And for that, I find the meditation to be a really important part to learn more about yourself, to learn also more about others, and um, yeah, to have also the openness for new things to come. Because if we are full with fixed ideas, I don't think there is a openness for new or for the truth to come, because I think the word truth we haven't mentioned much yet. And science is going after truth. Spirituality is also going after truth. And I'm very sure I only have a part of the truth. The, there are things which are hidden from my understanding, which are actually true. And I'm delusioned by what I think is true or what I see. or perceive as what I see. Because as we know, and you point, all the influence is a lot of mixed, it's mixed quite a bit with in our mind. So we are not seeing directly. We're not doing anything directly. It's very much filtered and altered. So we have that experience. So meditation, I think, helps to detach from that and to open a little space to actually be able to perceive truth and come closer to the truth.
That's so nice, and it is so true that there is this outer world and there is the inner world, and almost 99% of the work that is happening in all the universities is how to improve the outer world. And there is very, very little time given to even understand the inner world or to teach about this. And so this is a big imbalance there. And it is a timely message for the science world, but all the larger universities and larger world. Thank you very much, Dr. Thorsten Ludwig. It is a pleasure that you were with us. And thank you to Dr. Marco and Dr. Yo. We'll meet again very soon.